The next section is actually a panel conversation with a combination of presentations. We've kind of been talking about this whole thing about pricing. We've danced around it a little bit, but now it's the opportunity for us to really double click and deep dive into what it means to create a pricing strategy that allows you to weather the storm. And joining me for this conversation, the secret to pricing ticket admissions, right? I don't know if there's a secret, but we're about to find out. I have three of our panelists. Lara Mostert, who is a fellow marketer, and she is the marketing manager for the 4 South African Animal Sanctuary Alliances. So the acronym there is SAASA. Also joining me is Joep Stevens. He's the general manager for SANParks, for revenue and yield at SANParks, and Mann, who is the founder of Gateway Business Consultants. And each one of them will be sharing a little bit about their approach to their pricing strategies and some of their observations. So we're actually going to start with Lara. And Lara Mostert. Hi, Lara. If you can give me a second if you can give me a second to introduce you properly. As I mentioned before, she's the marketing manager involved in for the South African Animal Sanctuary Alliance. It's a bit of a mouthful. She studied advertising, and I love your story, Lara, because you studied advertising and found your way into tourism, and especially wildlife tourism. And she's an activist for animal rights, #animal rights in tourism, and strongly supports the Hands Off Our Wildlife campaign, something that as Africans we all should be supporting. She believes that responsible wildlife tourism is not optional. It is the only option. I couldn't agree more, Lara. Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me at this conference. It's the first time I'm doing a virtual one, so let's hope I don't mess it up. Anyway, I've got to just share my PowerPoint.
Not a problem. So Lara's going to share her screen.
Okay.
Yep.
See.
Give us a second.
So there we go, and we're going to go from the beginning. Okay, so this is me, Lara Mostert. I'm addicted to travel, as many of you are. I am the marketing manager for the South African Animal Sanctuary Alliance, SASA. We have 4 wildlife sanctuaries. We have Monkeyland in Plettenberg Bay, Birds of Eden, which is also in Plettenberg Bay, and then we have Jukani Wildlife Sanctuary, which is also in Plet. And we recently opened a 4th sanctuary. It's our newest one. It's based in Ballito in KwaZulu-Natal, and it's called Monkeyland KZN. I'm going to play a short little video of our SASA sanctuaries so that you can have an idea of what it's like here. And I think it's going. Maybe not. Let's go again. Here we go. Just to give you an idea, we buy forests and then we rehabilitate the animals and we release them inside of our sanctuaries and we educate the visitors on wildlife. This footage is from Monkeyland and Plet. As you can see, I work in an awesome space. We work with rescued cats. Many of our primates, they're from the pet trade, zoos that don't have space for them anymore. We also get animals in that were confiscated, that shot from Birds of Eden. Birds of Eden happens to be the world's largest single-dome bird aviary. Okay, so I think that video is stuck, but that would give you a very much so. Sorry about that. Here we go again. Sorry. My colleague in marketing, Favor, she is much better at technical stuff than me. So I just having a little glitch here. Okay. So when I travel, I'm always looking for things to do and places to explore. New experiences can be priceless. And especially if these experiences were worth your time and your money. I've been working in the tourist attraction industry for 25 years. And my travels and experiences have helped me position our pricing and keep it current and in line with similar experiences worldwide. And we rely heavily on internal packaging at SASA. For us, it's much easier to package internally than externally. So it enables us to keep our prices competitive. And if we package with other local tourist attractions, our packages will be too expensive and we'll attract a lot less feet. So I refer to our form of packaging as solo packaging. When it comes to visitor pricing, we take several factors into account. There's a lot to do in the tourist destinations that we're located in. So our visitor experiences have to be competitively priced, fun and worth the money. We also look at sustainability before pricing. So we care for more than 5,000 wild animals and feeding them is very expensive. So let's put that in perspective. If you have a domestic cat, it will cost about R8 for a sachet of cat food. We shelter and care and feed for more than 5,000 wild animals. So you'll see why feeding the animals in our care costs 600 plus per month, 1,000. The other costs like land, staffing, rates and taxes, water, electricity, marketing, these costs all escalate and can be crippling if not dealt with correctly. So this is why pricing your visitor experience correctly is so vital, not only for your product's longevity, but also for tourism growth. You must price your visitor experience to be affordable for tourists, local and international, yet be profitable. So we don't believe in the two-tier pricing system. It doesn't work for us. International visitors get upset when they know they must pay more for privately owned tourist attractions. And it costs them a lot of money to travel from abroad to visit. So why should they pay more? Then, so what do we charge? So our pricing structure is as follows. Children under 3 don't pay, and children aged 3 to 12 pay half price, the kiddie rate. A single sanctuary visit to any of our sanctuaries would cost 280 per adult. A combination ticket, so 2 of the 3 sanctuaries, will cost 450 per adult, so there's a saving of 110 Rand. A triple ticket will cost 560 per adult. That's going to all 3 sanctuaries. So you save 280 Rand. So basically with our solo packaging, you end up getting 1 sanctuary for free. Our combination tickets don't have to be used in one day. They can be split. A client has 1 year to use the ticket during. This aids in the ease and affordability for locals to visit us. Consumers like to be able to have choices, and they like these choices if they can save on a package deal, or they like to make use of promotional discounts. We find it makes them happy to save some money. We have membership options also. A single sanctuary will cost 560. 2 sanctuaries would be 900 for a membership, and all 3 would be 1,120. Memberships can be used for 1 year. So you can basically visit us every day of the year. So being a member of your local is a good idea. Periodically, we have promotions on our various social media platforms. Due to COVID and the lack of international visitor feed, we have increased the frequency of these promotional offers. As added an incentive to our tour operators and travel agents, we have frozen our 2020 rates and we'll use the same rates 2021. What type of promotions do we offer? Well, if you're a member of Monkeyland KZN, as an example, you're automatically a member of PLET, and vice versa. This is a fixed permanent promotion. We also introduced a half-price pension a day, and this is also a permanent promotion. We have buy a combo ticket and get a triptych pass for free. We use this for short-term promotions, and we're actually running this promotion next month. We are currently running a very popular COVID school special, and children aged 3 to 18 in this case pay our school group rate, which is it's cheap. It's 100 Rand for 1 sanctuary, 130 for 2 sanctuaries, and 165 for all 3. Our current school going child special helps parents with teenagers to save a lot of money. It's a 395 saving on a triptych, which is a lot of money to save. This is why it's such a popular one. If you don't ask for the promotion at reception, we rarely offer it, because you've got to follow us on social media and show an interest to know what's on offer and when, causes creates engagement. Pre-COVID, we collectively welcomed more than 240 paying visitors to our sanctuaries. In a year, we are not sure what visitor numbers will be post-COVID, but our pricing will remain the same. 70% of our visitors are international. We can't afford to drop our prices at SASA. Such an action will cost us dearly in the long term. It's not worth the risk. So this curveball COVID must not result in a knee-jerk reaction to your pricing structure. It must not result in that. What will happen if you drastically lower your prices because of the COVID pandemic and the lack of visitor feed? Visitors will believe that you have been overcharging them prior to the price drop. It will not communicate well. So a visitor will, for instance, say, so in August, you made a profit at 250 a ticket, but in December, I've got to pay 500. As a consumer, I would feel done in. So we need to avoid that. Rather introduce more promotions and start to think out of the box. How can we generate much needed revenue? So I would say become creative. Make use of modern and yet affordable technology to generate extra income. When we started to think outside of the box, we landed inside a box, a TV box. And we will be introducing monkeyland.tv shortly. This will not only provide paid-for entertainment for armchair travelers, but we will generate income from online product sales and other initiatives launched on this new platform. The pandemic may have crippled tourism in South Africa, but it is not the end of tourism in South Africa. It's just a new beginning. We just have to learn to do things a bit differently right now. South Africa is a stunning country with lots to offer. The international visitors will return. Without leaps of imagination and big dreams, we lose out on many possibilities. So dreaming is, after all, a form of planning. So I would say price well and dream big. And let me just go in there.
Thank you, Lara.
My little 10 things.
Thank you, Lara.
Our situation is very unique because we have wildlife sanctuaries that are very popular, and our pricing was positioned so that we don't empty your pockets. Yes. And a lot of other attractions in our area charge anything from 600 to 800 or more for the activity. So we wanted to position ourselves in the sense that if you do all 3 hour attractions, it is still cheaper than doing the others.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lara. You left us on an uplifting note, and I love the challenge that you framed, which is just think about things differently. You're staying with us because at the end of the presentations, we're going to have a panel discussion. So just hold that thought while I introduce the next speaker, Joep Stevens. And Joep is the General Manager of Revenue and Yield at SANParks. What I thought was really cool about Joep's story is, much like Lara, he started off in one sector, banking at one of the 5 big banks, the red one, and found his way into tourism, which has naturally become like the love of all our hearts. So I can totally understand why you took that leap of faith. He says getting to know the business of tourism in national parks was always his ambition, and he managed the largest camp in the Kruger National Park. Is that right? Skukuza. Sorry, Joep, go for it.
Correct, yes.
In 2003, he was transferred to Pretoria to implement what he refers to as the controversial conservation fee project for SANParks. I'd love to know more about that at some point. And his current responsibilities as GM include, obviously, reporting, maintaining tourism standards, reservations, pricing, tourism systems, etc., etc. So, hi, Joep. Thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Nico. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's a privilege to be able to give you a quick window of South African national parks, our pride, and I'm going to specifically talk a little bit about the pricing. There's no real secrets. We just refer to it as correct pricing. I'm going to run through a few slides just to give you this glimpse of our organization and how conservation fees have changed our organization for the better. This slide just shows that roughly 4/5 of our revenue comes from self-generated activities. So it's our own, mainly tourism business. And we get just 21%, the equivalent of $33 million US, through grants, mainly conservation grant and a roads grants from the state. So we're very reliant on our own activities for our financial sustainability. Those that are not familiar with our national parks, I'll just quickly show you a map of the 19 national parks spread across our country. And I think we've got one of the best park collections in the world, being the third most biodiverse country on the planet. And what I want to just highlight on this slide is the darker shaded parks. There's 6 of them that create a surplus, a financial surplus. So they make more revenue than they have in expenses. So we've got Kruger National Park there on the top right, our biggest. And then Kgalagadi on the top between Botswana and Namibia, Ograbis. Then more south, we've got close to Port Elizabeth, Addo Elephant National Park, Garden Route, and then one that's hardly visible, one of our smallest parks, Table Mountain National Park in the southwestern Cape. Those are the ones that create a surplus. The others are not, but they're still important to preserve as part of our conservation mandate. So basically in 2002, 2003, we undertook a strategy change in terms of pricing to national parks. And at that stage, it was informed by a couple of crises that came across our way. In 2000, we had the big floods in the eastern part of South Africa that disabled a lot of the Kruger National Park's inventory, putting us in a crisis there because we had to close a lot of big camps, having an impact on our cash flow. And secondly, then we had 9/11 crisis, which obviously pulled out the mat out of the international travel. So we basically were forced to go and look and say, how are we doing this? And we essentially looked at our pricing, which was just an entrance fee, a gate fee, once off. And we looked at the conservation fee model, which I'm going to just elaborate on a little bit further, as being more market related. So what we achieved over the years is we increased our gate fees, or conservation fees as we refer to them, from 16% of the total tourism revenue. So it was a minuscule proportion of our total tourism revenue, and we've increased that to 40% in the previous financial year. So that's what we've achieved through the change in strategy. And I just want to share with the delegates, what are some of the pointers, what are some of the guidelines, what are some of the lessons learned from this exercise. Which followed was very strongly benchmarking. So I've heard earlier speakers talk about research and so on. And obviously research is a crucial part of making good business decisions. So benchmark, compare, analyze, and then obviously consult. You've got to consult, especially as a state-owned enterprise. We can't just do as we want to. We have to consult our stakeholders, which are the public, which are operators, our key stakeholder being the state also. Decision we made at that time, roughly 17 years ago, was to set conservation fees at the lower end of the benchmarking. So we compared prices of national parks, reputable national parks across the continent, and we put them in a table, and we said, right, the top end was $35 at that time. The lower end was $15. So we sort of, let's be a little bit conservative. At that stage, we chose our top end parks to be priced at the bottom range. So we then put prices like the Kruger National Park at $15 at that time, which was a lot more than they were charging previously. And then we went to an important component is the per diem system. In other words, per day, we have roughly 10% of all our guests that stay overnight, and they were always paying just a once-off entrance fee. And said, okay, if you're in a national park and you're using public facilities, you should pay for that per day. And we then implemented that for overnight guests. It was then called per noctem, in other words, per night. So you pay for every night. And we dropped the vehicle fees. We did implement a differential fee structure, which was rather controversial at the time, because it wasn't really known in this country. And it was a 3-tier system. We brought in SADC, South African Development Community, which is our neighboring states, also into the picture, because we have a lot of relationships with them, and we've got Transfrontier Parks into many of our neighboring states. So we wanted to sort of promote and support the regional tourism. And that's why we brought in the 3 tiers at a ratio of 4 to 2 to 1. The internationals, SADC, and SA residents. So SA residents would be paying a quarter of what the standard or international conservation fee would be. So our approach, referring to Lara's discussion, it's not that internationals are paying more. We said our benchmarking was based on on comparing, and that was the international rate. So at that time, let's, for example, use $15 that was chosen for big parks like the Kruger, Addo, and Kalahari. That was the standard rate. We said, okay, rather than internationals paying more, we're saying South Africans pay less. So we say, okay, South Africans pay less because they contribute to the fiscus through the taxes that they pay. So that 20% subsidy or grant that we get from the state is funded obviously by South Africans. And we said, because you're a South African and you contribute to taxes, you pay a lesser rate. You're not paying the benchmark rate, you're paying a lesser rate. And that approach has been fairly successful for us. People have accepted it. We haven't had a lot of criticism. We also introduced a loyalty system, long-staying and regular guests, which is through our wildcard, which we have partners from other institutions also on. Important attributes for success. We're not saying we did this all well. We're just saying over the period, what lessons have we learned? Obviously, good project management, change management, consultation. An important component or an important characteristic of a situation like this is that preferably the revenue should stay within the protected area agency. A lot of the protected area agencies have to give their money to government and it goes into a big hole and there's no real incentive for them to drive it up. For us, it stays within the organization and we are able to then expand on our mandate of conservation. Solid business processes has taught us is very important. Systems, we really haven't got what we wanted to in terms of making access easier. We're getting there in Table Mountain slowly, but it's not quite what we want yet. Easy access, we want people to be able to capture their tickets before they get to the park, just go through and not have queues and things like that. Network issues are crucial in our country. You can have all the best systems, then you're reliant on a tower somewhere outside the park that conveys your credit card transactions and the power goes down and you're without connectivity. So there always needs to be contingencies. Keep in mind the macro environment. We look at things that are obviously then out of our control, such as inflation. South Africa has a relatively high inflation compared to some of our source markets. So we have annual price reviews. And then obviously the exchange rate is also an important factor. I mean, at the time when we implemented the conservation fees in 2003, the dollar was 12 Rand to a dollar. It's now 17.4. So these are all factors that play a big role in both affordability for your market and your own pricing. I think the final slide we look at here at some of the other issues more relating to market. So we've got, obviously we're in a beneficial situation before COVID anyway, that we have a nice marketing mix of 51% domestic, nearly half domestic visitors, the rest overseas, roughly 7 million visitors to our 19 national parks, and about 90% of them are day visitors. In other words, they just come in for the day or the attractions. 10%, roughly 700,000, are stay-over visitors that spend time in our overnight facilities. So good domestic market is good if you're obviously dependent on the internationals in situations such as this. It puts you at higher risk. So I think we're unique in the African context that we have a good domestic market. Many African countries are much more reliant on internationals, and that puts them at risk. And then just the 85-15, roughly half of the overseas people, they, however, contribute through the conservation fee model. They contribute 85% of the conservation fees, even though they're only half of the number of people. In the market, we spoke about the market being, we're understanding our market, comparing us to other attractions, to our competitors, to even international competitors, regional competitors. What are people charging? You know, we compete, ultimately as a country, we compete with East Africa when it comes to people coming to visit from abroad. And we have to try and understand what's happening there and how their models work. And then sound business policies is also a good attribute to have in place if you want a successful pricing model, is to make sure that you've got good policies, good solid pricing protocols that are not cost driven. You know, your pricing should not be cost driven because then they'll spiral out of the affordability range. They must be market driven. There's a fine balance between these two. So you've always got to make your prices market driven, and our policy says that. Be careful of discounting. We're quite firm on the discounting of conservation fees. We'd rather discount your overnight facilities, your accommodation. For example, we don't have a pensioners discount for conservation fee. There's the wild card that can benefit people such as pensioners. So we don't easily discount conservation fees. And then obviously you understand the pricing theory and your elasticity of demand. In other words, if you're going to push your prices up, what's the response in terms of demand? And then an important factor that we've applied all along as far as possible is give market proper notice, just courtesy, although our terms and conditions say we can increase prices at any time if we want to. We seldom ever apply it because we want to have respect for our market. We want to have respect for tour operators that have quoted in advance. So we always try and give, if there's any changes, we give people a year in advance notice. This in a nutshell is the background to how we got from the 16% to the 40% conservation fees as a component of our tourism revenue in SANParks. Thank you.
Thanks, Joep. Thanks for your transparency and for generously sharing your pricing strategy. And as you said, the secret to pricing is not quite a secret, and I think we'll go into that in a bit more detail later. But at this point, I want to invite our third and final panelist, Ian Mann. Ian is the founder of Gateways Business Consultants. Gateways Business Consultants is a 23-year experience in the consultancy space. He's a seasoned strategist who has worked with all different sized businesses across 14 countries. He's the author of 3 books, and if you'll give me a second, I'd love to give his books a plug. Managing with Intent, which is all about the implementation of strategy. Strategy That Works, which is about the formulation of strategy, particularly in medium-sized organizations. And finally, the Executive Update, a summary of the most significant business ideas over the preceding years. He's reviewed more than 650 books in his weekly columns, which I'm sure some of you would have seen, including Sunday Times and Fin24. And he is a director of 4 companies. Firstly, thank you for joining us, Ian, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Before I begin, I'd just like to warn you that as I'm going through this presentation, you might wonder what's this got to do with your context. I want to assure you that by the end, it'll be patently clear. So please bear with me, suspend disbelief. I'd like to share with you 3 stories. The first story is the story of the Dart. What happened was Chrysler realized that compact cars are going to be the way of the future. People are going to need them. Japanese were coming in with them, and Chrysler realized that they have to do something to make a stand in this market and take their fair share. What they did, they decided that the Dart was going to be absolute perfection. They gave the engineers a mandate. They said to them, you have the latitude to build whatever you want. The only thing is, we want the perfect compact car that the markets will go absolutely wild for. And when they were absolutely sure that this was the perfect vehicle in every single respect, what they did, they launched it. Those of you can remember Apple trying to get into the map market, like Google Maps or Waze, will remember a thing called Apple Maps. It was an absolute fiasco. It was completely awful. The launch of the Dart was Apple Maps bad. It was that bad. They undersold. They probably sold a quarter of what they'd hoped to sell. The car was slammed everywhere and nothing happened. Let's have a look at another car, the Porsche Cayenne. Porsche, as you know, has a background in racing cars, fast cars, sports cars, high-end cars, and they decided that they would like to enter the SUV market. Now, that is completely out of their comfort zone. Their comfort zone is speed, their comfort zone is style, and they're going to come up with an SUV. They did. The result of their SUV, the way that they developed that, they generated the highest profits per car in the entire car industry. That was Porsche. entering an area that they knew nothing about. Then on the left-hand side, you've got a picture of an Asus mini book. These things were so cute. They came out in about 2008. You could pick them up with two fingers. They were selling at $2.99. It was fantastic. The consumers absolutely loved it. They were enthusiastic about it. So enthusiastic that in the first days there was available in Germany, it sold out. It was so good that in fact demand totally exceeded their capacity to supply by 900%. 900%. They just couldn't manufacture fast enough, and they lost significant revenue. Had they priced that computer slightly higher, in fact, not even slightly higher, they would have made a lot of money. They were way underpriced. Asus went along and left a huge amount of money, huge amount of profit on the table. Now, there are three approaches to pricing, three wrong approaches to pricing. One is called feature shock. When you're coming up with any new offering, whether it's a product or a service, it's very, very easy to get excited about your product and just figure we're going to fill this product with all sorts of goodies, just many things which are great to have, must-haves, nice-to-haves, and it's absolutely full. A good example of that was the Dart. It was full of features. The problem is that when you're faced with so many features, they overwhelm you, and you look at most of these features and you say, one thing, these are only nice to have. In fact, half of them I'm never ever going to use anyway. The problem with the shock is that because there's so many features, you actually overlook the few features that you would have gladly paid real money for. We mess up the pricing as Dart did through feature shock. The next error that people make is minivation. We have the right product for the right market. Problem is that we don't allow it to achieve what it should achieve because we price it far too low. Asus was a wonderful example. They were a minivation. They could have pushed their price up considerably and they would have sold all their capacity and made real money. But they didn't. The third pricing mistake is called the undead. Now, the undead should have died. They just didn't. The product should have been killed because it answers questions that nobody asks. It provides the wrong answers to the right questions. Those are three types of errors that people in businesses selling products or services land up doing when their prices are all wrong. So if all this is so wrong, why did Porsche get it so right and the others get it so wrong? The reason for that is because Porsche seemed to understand something which the others didn't. And that is, what is the nature of price? Generally, when we look at prices, what we do is we say, how much will it cost us to provide this product or service? How much profit do we need to make at the end of it? And basically, what else is there in the market? And if we are higher than other people, we better advertise better and explain to them why we're so much better and they actually have to have us. And we do our very, very best to do that. But it's completely to misunderstand what price is. Price is only the expression of the value the customer perceives, nothing else. It's an expression of the value the customer perceives they're getting. And also, it is their willingness to pay for it. When you start thinking about price as an expression of value that the customer perceives, not you perceive, the customer perceives. Not only do they perceive this as value, but you actually can calibrate and work out what is their willingness to pay for that value that they perceive. What Porsche did was they investigated every single feature that the customer would want. They also investigated every single amount that the customer would be willing to pay for that particular feature. What they did is they did that first. Now, they built the car around the price, not the price around the car. In a survey that was done in 2014, it covered 1,600 companies in 40 countries. 80%, that's almost everyone, decided on the price after the product was built and just before it was launched. You can't get the pricing right if you build your product around the price, if you don't build your product around the price rather than the price around the product. What we need to do is we need to have, if we're going to solve this dilemma, we need to have what can best be called the willingness to pay conversations. It's the remedy. It's the remedy for future shock. It's a remedy for innovation. It's a remedy for the undead. We need to ask people who are going to buy from us, how much they're prepared to pay for each feature. You want this feature, you like it, I love it. How much would you actually pay for that feature? If you can identify what that is, you're going to price your product correctly. Porsche, every single feature had to stand trial before the customer and their willingness to pay for it. If you don't do that, you'll never know whether you charged too much or too little and left stuff on the table. Now, you're probably asking yourself, as I thought you would, I hoped you would, excuse me, we've got a museum, we've got a game park. We can't go around reinventing ourselves now. That's what we've got. It's okay, it's given. All the stuff you spoke about is terrific if you're coming up with a new app or a new motor car. Our area has been teeming with game for hundreds of years. Our museum took millions to put up. We can't just change it. This is the point. We are now at a very, very strange position in world history, certainly in commercial history in our parts of the world. We've had the COVID virus. This has been a tremendous shock to everyone. It's an opportunity for us to think again now about, are we priced correctly? This opportunity is not going to come again. We mustn't blow it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ian. And what I really loved about your presentation is that you brought learnings from out of the category of which we can absolutely learn from. Hi, Joep. Welcome back. We caught you off guard there. The joys of digital. Before we go into asking our panelists a couple of questions, we do have a poll for all of you that are watching. And the question we'd like you to answer is, in the past year, have you reviewed your pricing strategy? Your options are, yes, we looked at the price only. Yes, we looked at various ticketing strategies. No, or no, but now I realize how important this is. Okay, let's open up the polls and get a sense of where everyone is at in terms of their pricing strategy. Remember, you find the polls in the Q&A?
In the Q&A, that's right.
In the Q&A section on the app, both the web app as well as the mobile app. We'll give it a few seconds.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, there we go. We see some polls coming through.
Great.
Good.
Okay. We'll get our results shortly. Just bear with us.
All right, I think we can get the results.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so okay. The numbers are changing real time.
It's still live.
So over 50% of you have said that you have reviewed your ticketing strategies, and just under 30% of you are looking at price only. Okay, so that's interesting. And it segues into my first question, which is directed at you, Ian. Why we've spoken a lot this morning about the importance of customer experience in terms of triggering demand back to our attractions. But I just want to go back to a very simple question. Why does pricing strategy and pricing matter in terms of triggering demand? How does it matter and why does it matter?
It only matters if you're doing it correctly. You will not trigger demand if the people don't want what you're offering. If you're sure that you understand what the customer really wants and what he's willing to pay for what he values, you can price correctly. You simply can't price correctly by putting out a price and just hoping generally that would happen. That's why you have to have this pricing conversation. It's absolutely critical that you do that sort of investigation first so you can see whether things which you've thrown into the mix, which actually cost you money, are not even appreciated by the customer. You'll only be able to get whether that mix is correct if you've spoken to them and you said, what do you value? Because price is a replica, a statement of what they value and their willingness to pay for it. I think if you use that as a principle, you're probably going to come up with the right pricing point.
Brilliant.
And Lara, I've got a question to you, because you mentioned that unless people ask for the special, you don't give it to them at the ticket office. Because you don't want to leave money on the table. I know my experience with this was quite interesting. I was the CEO of Table Mountain Cableway for 10 years. And I once went out and asked people why they don't come up the mountain, use the cableway, and they said it was too expensive. I then asked them, what is the price? And on average, they overestimated the price by 40%. So that's also interesting. They're not coming because it's expensive, but they've got the wrong price in their head. How have you dealt with that?
Okay, so generally if, say, pensioners walk into reception and they say not referring to the special, you'd actually find we try and read our customers. So you'll find that, they swipe their card and off they go. So if they don't ask for the discount, we don't give it. But if I can see that the person is, you can see them making little stumps in their head, then one of my colleagues might pop up and say, didn't you see on Facebook we're running a... Sorry.
Live? Fantastic. Does your cat have something to say?
Yes, your cat can join the panel
I've got
conversation.
several stray cats. We seem to take in everyone's unwanted cat. Anyway, so we try and read our customers, as I said. So if a big family group comes in and I can see them sort of calculating in their head that this is maybe going to cost them too much, then we'll tell them about our COVID school special. So we like to engage with our customers, and we're not going to. So if a family come in and you can see that they flush, they probably drove here in a Porsche or whatever the case might be, then we just won't mention it, because that way we make a little bit extra money and it doesn't harm them. And doesn't harm us. But if I can see that the people need that little bit of a monetary relief, then we do that. And we've got a billboard advertising our price as you drive up the Monkeyland Road. So all our prices are advertised on there, and it's a massive board. So we don't hide our pricing, and people generally don't have a problem with us because we are priced really competitively. It's very affordable to visit us, and the experience is completely unique.
And I've been to your site. It's a fantastic experience. Just seeing your cat walk past. You know what I've liked is at the start of COVID, when we were all professional in Zoom meetings and we had those irritating false backgrounds behind us, and it all felt so inauthentic. And I love the fact that we've embraced where we are, and things are just a little bit more authentic.
Absolutely.
Joep was a little bit late. Your cat came past. I like it.
It's all very real.
For me, it's real. Yeah.
And on the topic of realness, and I think it would be, we'd be missing a trick if we didn't have a discussion about the recent lockdowns, the whole COVID thing. And this question is directed to all the panelists, but I want to start with you, Joep, because you were very transparent in terms of your pricing approach and your pricing strategy. How has COVID-19 and the pandemic affected how you're relooking or reviewing your strategy as we enter into this reopening period? And then to Ian and Lara, similarly, should attractions be interrogating their strategies now and potentially changing them? So Joep, you first.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we've certainly looked at it, and the pandemic has been, the impact has been immense, as can be expected, because we're reliant on the revenue, as you've seen, for a large proportion of our expenses. So it's been crippling to the organization, and in terms of our pricing, we've got what we call good yielding principles, where we are able to discount according to demand. So where we now have traditionally go into our busy overseas season, which was October, November, that's not going to happen. We know we're not going to get the demand from the domestic, so we're going to have to put in specials and promotions so that we get people into the parks. We want to try and promote. Now's our opportunity to promote local. There's a big drive from the industry to push domestic at this stage. People can't go overseas. Let them come to let them spend locally. Let them come to the national parks. Let them visit the country, and so we're very responsive to demand changes. If we see there's no people, then we'll drop the price to get people in, because let's rather have some people than no revenue at all.
Great. Ian, your view at a strategic level?
Very simply, I think we need to get granular about this. We mustn't miss. We've got an opportunity now to recalibrate what we're pricing. There's a good reason to do this because things have changed a lot. Now, probably more than ever, we really need to interrogate very, very deeply, what does the customer genuinely value, and how much would they pay to get that value? And unless we have that detailed information, understanding that, we can't do anything else. Clearly, we have to advertise. Clearly, we have to do all the other things. But I think that there's one thing, identifying the correct pricing, based not on what we want from the car, but what the person wants from the benefits that they're prepared to pay for, is the way I think we need to go.
Great.
And I think there's an opportunity for us to start with that and take that part of the pricing equation very seriously.
Okay. And Lara, from your perspective, how are you
Well,
viewing?
as I mentioned in my presentation, we are introducing promotions on a much more frequent level than we did before. And the promotions are really good deals, like the COVID school special we have at the moment, where a teenager saving on a triple ticket would be 395 Rand, the parents save. So those are really bringing feet through to us. And we are introducing Monkeyland.tv, which is we're actually busy digging trenches and things. We're putting several webcams up through the Monkeyland forest, because monkeys are really entertaining and fun creatures to watch.
Yeah.
And we're actually missing the boat and this opportunity. We should have jumped on this when technology was sort of just invented, But I mean, we did try and introduce webcams once, and then the monkeys would break the camera, then we'd buy another one and they'd break the camera. But now we figured out a way around it, and we can keep our cameras safe now. So, and this way we can also, with the introduction of Monkeyland.tv, we can bank footage, we can create little movies, but there will be all this live streaming constantly with the sensor cams, and that this enables us to tap into the armchair travel market and have online shops and things like that. So we're really doing this mostly for our international market, because as I mentioned, it costs us 600,000 Rand just to feed all the animals in our care. And we kind of need, I don't think that the domestic market is going to make us reach that level. So we had to introduce new product to get us there.
Thank you. Cool. We've run over time a bit, so...
Yeah, a bit. A little more than
But
a
it's
bit.
such an important topic.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we do need to start on time at 1 o'clock, so it's going to be a shorter lunch break.
We did have a lot of questions for our panelists, but unfortunately, because we've run over time, we are going to say a big thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your insights. The thing for me, as I entered this conversation, I asked myself, is it about lowering prices? Is it about increasing prices? Is it that binary? And what I've learned is, go back to your consumer, ask the right questions, and you will get the answer through your data. So thank you, Ian. Thank you, Joep. Thank you, Lara. Thanks for joining us today.